We're going to look at the Chroma Warper, a new tool that allows us to make smooth hue and saturation adjustments with a single operation. It's not unlike being able to use both the hue v hue and the hue versus sat curves at the same time. Now, I won't sugarcoat this. It can be a difficult tool to develop a feel for, but it does have some value, and I find for quite specific tasks. We've got two new clips to practice with here. This is because they have very distinct colours and are good to practice on with tools that target hue. We will return to the previous short sequence after both of our lectures on the Chroma Warper. Now, the Chroma Warper is accessible from the Color Warper window. You access that by clicking on the spider's web icon down here. We now default to the new Chroma Warper. If we want to go back to the old Color Warpers, we need to click either the hexagon or the grid back here. And then if we've done that, on the little triangle or cone icon here. It is worth mentioning that you can use either the Chroma or Color Warper on a single node, but not both at the same time. If you want to use both tools, you need to split that operation up across at least two nodes. Right, so let's take a closer look at all of this. I've got a shot here, and I want to do some work on the foliage in the background. It's an off color, it's too yellow. And I also want to work on the red cap here. I want to do this without pulling any time-consuming secondary keys. I'm going to want to make hue and saturation adjustments. So we will start with the foliage. The Chroma Warper has two modes, normal and point-to-point. The default is, unsurprisingly, normal. This lets us take a group of target hue and saturation values and change their hue and saturation smoothly. Let's look at how this works. Before we start, we want to enable a particular setting that makes it much easier to understand what we are doing. In the three dots here, click, and then go to Scope, and make sure you have Output selected. This will make sense in a moment. We're going to fix the foliage with this adjustment. I want to grab this yellow-green value and change it to a greener green, and keep the saturation in check. Now, down below, notice we have a similar reading to the vector scope. This is the chromaticity diagram, and it's a lot like the vector scope. The further the reading reaches towards the edge, the more saturated it is, and the direction it's pointing in is the hue. What I can do is I can click and I can drag the white signal around and push it so that it lands in a different place on the diagram down here, thus changing both its hue and saturation. This is called a stroke, and it produces two dots, a line, and an area of effect indicator called the chroma range on the chromaticity diagram. It lets us easily see how we are changing the colors of our image. I'm essentially grabbing everything within the chroma range of my initial click and moving it across the chromaticity diagram. The diagram only shows hue and saturation, so we are qualifying based on hue and saturation when using this tool. So I'm going to reset what I've done by hitting the reset switch up here, and let's take a look at the foliage. Now, using this diagram, I can easily feel out where the yellowish part of our reading needs to land in order to look like a convincing green for our foliage. And by checking along with the image in the viewer, I can dial it in. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to drag it down. And there we are to the right. And we can drag down there. So now we can see the before and the after. We've got a much more convincing color for our foliage now. So I will do this again, and I will show you the second and perhaps easier way to interface with this tool. I'm just going to hit the reset button again. If I mouse around in the viewer up here, notice there's an orange crosshair in the chromaticity diagram below. This is showing us the hue and saturation value of the pixel underneath the cursor. And if I click on this pixel and start to drag, look what's happening. It's mirroring the movement of my cursor on the diagram below. So I can actually click and drag the hue and saturation within my image around. So now I can drag it down and to the right a little bit. And I can fix my foliage that way. The benefit of doing this is that it takes the guesswork out of targeting the color you want to work with. Now, I've hit most of the relevant values here, but if I hit this icon, I can pop the scope up and out. You can see I've got some very saturated parts of my signal down here, still haven't been moved that much. So I want to tweak this and dial it in. I can actually put any number of strokes down here on the diagram. So now that I've made my initial stroke, I can make a second one, and I can just push it down there to bring it back and align it with the new signal I've made with the chroma warper. And now I've got all of my foliage in quite a good place down here. So here I have the finished correction addressing the yellow hue in the foliage. Now, if I want to tweak these strokes, I can do that. I can click the cursor icon here and just left click to select a stroke and drag either of the dots around. I can change it after the fact. Very, very easily. And I can even add new ones as well. Let's say I want to move these values around down here. Maybe there's a few very saturated yellow values that we weren't hitting beforehand, although this is going to start hitting the skin, this correction. So I maybe won't do that one. If I want to get rid of an individual stroke, I highlight it and hit the trash can. So combining both methods of interacting with the chroma warper tends to yield the best results. So I've fixed the foliage for now. I can close this. I'm now going to take a look at the hat. When working on the hat, we'll take a look at the point-to-point mode. I want to change the color of the red cap here, but it's a big adjustment. Point-to-point is like picking up a part of your signal down here and then dropping it somewhere else, instead of just pushing it. The intention here is to allow for significant color changes, for example, changing a blue shirt to yellow. In practice, it really only works with very distinct colors. So let's try to work on the cap here. I'm going to hit this icon, which means that now we're going to be working in point-to-point mode and not in normal mode. And I can grab hold of the hat, and I can move it anywhere I want in the spectrum and change its color entirely. Now we obviously have problems here. I'm not getting the less saturated values of the hat. So let's say for argument's sake, I want to make it more kind of magenta. Now I'm not hitting the values I want here, and we can see we've got problems with this qualification and we need to refine it. And we'll do that in the next lecture. But before we move on, I'd like you to play around in normal mode on a few shots. This tool is awkward at first and it takes time to develop a feel for it. Click on through to the next lecture once you're ready.